So we're going to open the floor for questions now. Jody and Lorraine will be coming around with the mic. Over here.
I don't need a mic. What does JVP advocate as a solution to the Middle East dispute? Do you advocate a one state, two-state solution? What is your goal?
Sure, I'll take it. Our goal is a state, if states are still what is happening, that provides equality for all its citizens. We don't care if it's one state, two states, 10 states, as long as it's equality for all its citizens and a state of all its citizens, not an ethnocracy, but a state where everyone can be equal.
Just to add to that, JVP's approach is a rights-based approach. In other words, it's not up to JVP to divide up the land and advocate one political plan over another. That's really for Israelis and Palestinians to determine. But our approach as American Jews is to say whatever that plan is, that it needs to be based in universal human rights, civil rights for all. And whether, as Lynn said, whether that's one state or two states or however many, it's the rights-based approach that I think makes us unique in the Jewish world.
Unlike these guys, I've never been to Israel, and I work mostly as an American. I don't want my government paying, like Grant said, I'm uncomfortable with my government militarily supporting force and murder around the world. So my approach is better. Rose?
Yeah, I was raised as a secular Jew. And my Jewishness is based in the ethics of Judaism. And that's how I feel Jewish. And I feel very let down by what the state of Israel is doing. The Jews survived 2,000 years of oppression, humiliation, no state, and they survived and came to this point. And I'm afraid. I'm very much afraid. I'm very worried about what will happen to the concept of Jewish ethics. Would Rabbi Rosen address that?
I think that's a very, very important, you bring up a very important point. You know, Zionism, as I pointed out before, is a modern movement. And it arose during a time in which nationalism, modern European nationalism in particular, was really seen as the main way that a people could realize self-determination. It was seen as a liberating force, nation-statism. And Zionism is the Jewish version of that. And I understand why its appeal, especially when you think historically, especially not only after the Holocaust, certainly after the Holocaust, but Zionism arose well before the Holocaust. Theodor Herzl was couching his ideas largely in response to European anti-Semitism. So I understand the appeal of a state of one's own to allow people to be determining of their own future, self-determination, and to be safe just on a very basic level. And I think the tragedy of Zionism, I think that the tragedy of nationalism in general, is that it doesn't make us safe. It's something of a Faustian bargain, I think. And nationalism, when you look at modern nationalism in general, not just Zionism, millions and millions and millions have been killed, not out of religious, through religious wars, but through nationalistic wars. And I think we need to reckon very, very seriously with this deal that we've made by shaking hands with nationalism as Jews. And at the very, very least, to question what has brought us to this point, and not just simply accept Zionism as somehow coterminous with Judaism, because Judaism from its outset, when it was formed in the wake of the destruction of the Second Temple, that was formed out of the experience of exile. Judaism as we know it emerged out of the experience of exile and this notion that we Jews could live anywhere in the world. And theologically speaking, the notion of God in exile as well, that God would be with us wherever we went. We didn't need a temple in Jerusalem. We didn't need a land that geographically located God. That was the brilliant, liberating moment in Jewish history that allowed us to create Judaism as we know it, this multi-ethnic, multicultural sense of peoplehood that could live anywhere in the world and still feel connected to Am Yisrael, to the people of Israel. Somehow, Zionism has co-opted that brilliant ethos and has eclipsed the notion of a global peoplehood and reduced it to nation-statism. And I think it's a very Jewish thing to question that, and to question the point to which it has brought us. I absolutely agree.
Rabbi, would you explain in Israel what Orthodox Judaism, how it stands in relation to Reform and conservative Jews? Because I understand that to be a very conflicted situation with the control, theological and otherwise, rather oppressively in the hands of the Orthodox. How would you describe that situation?
When Israel was founded, David Ben-Gurion in particular made a deal with the religious Zionists of the time to grant civil authority to the traditional Jewish rabbinate. And since that time, and that was a way that he was able to maintain the support of the religious Zionist world by giving them that power. So their civil authority since that time has been controlled by who you refer to as Orthodox Jews, traditional Jews. Reform and conservative Judaism has no standing, religious standing, civil or otherwise, in Israel. So if I or a conservative rabbi moved to Israel, we couldn't function officially as rabbis. We couldn't do weddings. We couldn't, serve on rabbinical courts, etc. That's all in the hands of the Orthodox. And by the way, for liberal Jews, I think more often than not, what gets American liberal Jews up in arms when it comes to criticizing Israel has less to do with the political situation of the Palestinians and the disenfranchisement of their denominations in Israel. There's a group called Women at the Wall, for instance, because the Wall is, for all intents and purposes, the Western Wall, an Orthodox synagogue. It's run by the Orthodox authority, the traditional Jewish authority there, and women can't, according to Jewish law, for women to have prayer, it's prohibited for women to have prayer services. So there is a movement afoot that's been many years old now for women to engage in civil disobedience by having women's prayer services at the Wall, and it engenders great violence at times. And there are many, many people in the liberal Jewish community that are openly and unabashedly supportive of Women at the Wall and enormously critical of the state of Israel for disenfranchising them as Jews. One of the things I've tried to point out in my writing is that if we could somehow extend our sense of disenfranchisement to non-Jews who happen to live there, as well as so many American Jews who feel disenfranchised but don't even live there, we may be on the road to understanding the crux of this issue.
Hi, Rachel, you had spoken a little bit earlier about the military industrial complex funding of, Israel's military. And I guess my question is how do you take the Facebook numbers that Lynn was talking about and actually convert those people that support Jewish Voices for Peace into people that are actually donating and doing things politically like AIPAC is doing, so that they're actually a real force and not just people watching YouTube videos?
Yeah, I can take. A couple of years ago, JVP was at a crossroads, and our membership was much smaller than it is right now. And there was a portion of JVP members who wanted us to start building a lobbying organization, a la J Street. And we assessed where our movement was and thought we need to grow the grassroots first. And when we have strong enough grassroots, then we will start trying to influence Congress, whether it's by, visiting and nagging and lobbying, or whether it's, joining the traditional way and raising money. So actually, just in this last year, or year and a half, we've started very actively organizing JVP visits to local representatives. Right now, we've got something going where we're concentrating on members of the Progressive Caucus, Congressional Progressive Caucus, and we are hiring our first DC person who will not exactly be a lobbyist, but will be a presence in DC and in that world. So we're moving there. We need more people, and we need more knowledge of working like that. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And also, the other thing that I like to think is that when J Street finally wakes up and realizes that what they're pushing for is utterly impossible, that those people will find a very comfy, soft landing with JVP.
Just to add to that, so much of this depends on your own theory of change and how change occurs in the world. And I often think back to the civil rights movement in this country and how there was this incredible grassroots movement that arose to push the political elites in a certain direction so that they were able to have the political cover to make the changes that they eventually did. I mean, President Johnson didn't sign the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act out of the goodness of his heart. He did it because there were people every week outside his office chanting and demanding change. It was a real movement, a grassroots movement that had arisen and able to move him in that direction. And I think what makes JVP unique is that it's really concentrating on first and foremost on building that grassroots and joining already a burgeoning movement that goes beyond just the Jewish community. That's truly a popular movement. Lynn mentioned J Street. When J Street was formed, there was an organization called Brit Tzedek V'Shalom that some of you may be familiar with that I was involved with for a time that really did focus on creating a grassroots consensus for the two-state solution, and it got merged into J Street to become their sort of grassroots ground troops, as it were. What's happened, unfortunately, is over the last several years, J Street had made a very conscious decision to do away, that almost doesn't exist anymore. They're concentrating solely on lobbying Congress now. They're trying to play AIPAC's game, and they're losing. And I think it was a huge tactical mistake to ignore their grassroots, because what they're finding now is that within J Street, the young people, what's called J Street U, are among those who formed, if not now when, for instance, this grassroots group of folks, young people, who were knocking at the doors of the Jewish establishment during the Gaza war. So the people, the streets will wake up, are already waking up. And I think JVP is an example of an organization where we see our theory of change as moving from the streets outward, if you will.
Can I also just add to that? Do you mind?
I was going to, and then you can?
Sure.
Because I just got an update from the floor, actually.
This just in.
Yeah, this just in. Lynn mentioned the Rasmia O'Day case, and this is an example of things that JVP can mobilize. There's a mobilization to try and get Rasmia O'Day out of solitary confinement, and you could talk to Tracy back there in the green scarf after, but she's also sent me a phone number, 8110-987-1700, to just ask for Rasmia and ask for her to be released from solitary. She's 67 and has health problems. There's also more information at stopfbi.net. I also just wanted to say that there's been, in terms of your question about addressing militarism, the boycott, divest, sanctions movement has just had JVP has just had a success in Durham, North Carolina, in waging a campaign against the international security company G4S, which, as they investigated it, turned out not only to run much of the prisons and checkpoints in Israel, but to be doing some private policing in Durham. And I think after this week, a lot of us are really interested in policing and what's going on with that and privatization. And so that campaign linked local to international abuses and wound up getting this county of Durham to divest its holdings from G4S. And it's something that our chapter is very interested in, campaigns like that, because something like G4S, that is the cutting edge of neoliberal militarism. And if we can address them, they are active in Milwaukee, Racine, Kenosha, and we're working on it. Come work with us. Sorry, Lorraine, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to address, are you hearing me? I just wanted to address the issue of how do you turn all the Facebook likes into more action, or how does JVP doing that? And I think it's through using a wide variety of strategies, and therefore being able to appeal to a variety of things that people might be willing to be involved in, from changing Jewish ritual all the way to being on the streets and being in solidarity at Ferguson, right? So it's BDS, it's through, as Lynn mentioned, in universities, through the academic, JVP Academic Advisory Council, to a variety of different kind of BDS work, and that it's the Facebook issue is not just that, it's the growth in the chapters. So that shows you that people are really wanting on the ground to organize and to get involved, and it includes going and speaking with local congressmen, senators. So it's because we're using, I think, a wide variety of strategies that can appeal to a lot of different people.
So, thank you.
Other questions?
I've been critical of much of what Israel has done over the years, but I still feel very strongly that it has to exist as a safe haven for Jews. How are we to deal with the intolerance and the violence of those opposed to Israel and those who say that it needs to be wiped off the face of the earth?
I'm concerned about that as well. But I think we need to, within that concern, take a step back and think historically how we came to this point and where the sense of anger toward Israel is really coming from. Is it coming from incorrigible anti-Semitism in Arab countries that has just been around for time immemorial and will never go away? Just people who just will not countenance the presence of Jews in their backyard? I don't think that's historically or intellectually accurate. I think that this is not, I'm not in any way downplaying our concern over anti-Semitism in the Middle East or anywhere in the world. But I think, by and large, this is a political conflict, not a religious one. I think the issue is a political opposition to what is Israel's action, the circumstances of Israel's founding that goes back to a colonial mindset that has wreaked havoc in the Middle East for many centuries and continues to disenfranchise people who have very deep roots there. I question the claim that this is somehow a safe haven for Jews. I mean, if you look at the state of Israel, I think it is the only place really in the world where Jews live in a constant state of insecurity. It's not as, for whatever concern we have over anti-Semitism in Europe or in this country or anywhere else, Israel has perpetually been besieged from its very, very origins. And I think the notion of Israel as a safe haven, to me, is more rooted in ideology than true reality. I think all the Jews in this room, the American Jews in this room, are secure in this country for very good reasons, because America has been a safe haven for our people who came here looking for a better life. I understand psychologically, especially post-Holocaust, why the notion of nationalism and Jewish state of our own might seem to point towards safe haven, but it simply hasn't resulted in that. It's resulted in perpetual conflict and violence and war and bloodshed and sorrow on all sides. I also think that if you look historically at when Arab attitudes and even Palestinian attitudes towards Jews and anti-Semitism, toward Israel and anti-Semitism in general, has evolved, whenever there was progress being made toward a peaceful solution politically, particularly during the early days of Oslo, we saw a huge change in surveys of Arab attitudes toward Jews, and toward the state of Israel, which indicates that the more we move toward a just solution, the more of a safe haven this will ultimately be for Jews and for non-Jews who live in this land. If you want to add to that.
Yeah, we'll take two or three more questions.
Thank you. What policy do you advocate in the United States? What policies would you like to see changed, particularly in regards for financial and military support of Israel? Do you want it ended completely, phased out, reduced, or at least made more transparent? Right now, the U.S. aid to Israel is the only account that is not audited. There's no accounting for where the money goes. Every penny of money that goes to Egypt, for example, they have to account for, and money is withheld if it's not properly audited. But that's well, getting into details. But what policy does Jewish Voices for Peace advocate in terms of U.S. policy towards Israel? What would you like to see changed?
Well, generally JVP promotes the suspension of aid to Israel until and unless it complies with international law. And addressing your comment about the lack of transparency, I believe that JVP is working on that, along with the U.S. campaign to end the occupation, to focus on scrutinizing Israeli use of U.S. military weapons supplied to it, and comparing it to, subjecting it to the Lehi law, which is a law that makes it illegal for any monies provided by the U.S. to foreign countries to be used against civilians. So watch for that.
Hi, everybody. I just had a question. Since we're on a college campus, I don't know how many undergraduates are actually here, but what advice would you give to undergraduates, both Jewish, Palestinian, or any undergraduate that cares about the issue in terms of dialoguing with each other, and for educators, how to kind of facilitate informative and provocative dialogue without necessarily alienating any particular group of students? So, broad education question.
That's a great question. I think in academic institutions, perhaps more than any other institution that is committed to the values of open inquiry, we need to promote an open-minded, completely open-minded attitude toward and good faith in one another's opinions. And unless someone is actively advocating violence or the destruction of people, that there's nothing that's off limits in terms of what we can talk about. And I think it means promoting a culture where we're not afraid, that that open discourse is inherently safe. I think increasingly we're hearing an exact opposite kind of culture, which is that by certain ideas make me feel unsafe. And I think we need to turn that on, we need to address that issue on its head and really address the issue of what is it we're really talking about when we're talking about safety or security. Are we really talking about discomfort? I think 9 times out of 10 that's what we're talking about. I think we need to be willing to be made uncomfortable. We need to create spaces where safety is synonymous with willingness to go to uncomfortable places and to push ourselves beyond our comfort zones and be explicit about that. I think the issue of safety is being wielded as an epithet and almost a weapon, that your ideas make me feel unsafe, therefore they are not welcome, and I'm not going to listen. So I think these are the kinds of things that need to be written into the ground rules of the kinds of programs that we are promoting here, which is that colleges are institutions that promote critical thinking and open inquiry, and we're here not here to convert anyone to our way of thinking, but to be open to listening to others and to allow a diversity of opinions to thrive. I unfortunately see the culture moving in the exact opposite direction, both not only within student environments, but also in student-faculty environment as well. Those are some initial thoughts. I don't know if Lynn, you have others.
It's happening right here at Marquette.
It's happening everywhere.
Some of the people in this room, myself included, come from other faiths or religious traditions. Some Roman Catholics, some are other Christians. There may be some Muslims here also, I'm not sure. We probably won't have a lot of influence in terms of encouraging people to become part of JVP. How do you see JVP and other groups, either faith or secular, working together on some of the bigger issues, such as divestment, such as policy change, and some of the other really important issues that I know you're talking about?
Well, we're already doing it. Lynn mentioned, for instance, the Presbyterian GA this past spring, and I have no doubt that the role of JVP was enormously important in Detroit in helping to leverage that final vote. And that only emerged out of a very deep collaboration with the Presbyterian Church that goes back many, many, many years. I'm starting a new job with the American Friends Service Committee, and part of the reason that I have this new job is based on the relationships that I've cultivated in the Chicago community in particular, not just on Israel-Palestine, but on many, many issues like immigration reform, labor justice, anti-militarism in general. So JVP is already doing it. I think JVP from its origin has seen a very important part of its job as being part of coalition building, particularly with other faith communities. Palestinian Christians are another area that we have very, very deep relationships with Sabeel and Friends of Sabeel North America. Almost every time there's a FOSNA convention around the country, you'll see a JVP presence there. So I think it's sort of woven into the fabric of how we see our mission. Is interfaith and interpolitical collaboration and coalition building.
And also, it's sort of my sort of fond dream that at some point in the future, Jewish Voice for Peace won't need to exist. And not necessarily because it's the problem is all solved, but because Jewish privilege on this matter has receded. And we're all working together in interfaith groups and in secular groups. And so that's where I see it going ultimately, and where the real power will be.
And I'll just add that our JVP chapter here is interfaith as well.
Okay, so I think we will just, okay.
We're, of course, a brand new chapter here in Milwaukee, and one of the things that propelled some of us, myself included, to take the step to form a chapter was the way in which the Jewish Chronicle, which is a publication of the Jewish Federation here, dealt with the Gaza uprising. they absolutely had nothing to say in the Chronicle issue about any criticism of Israel. So one of the things I'm wondering is,